welcome to March's Positive Images Festival Poetry Workshop. I thought I'd film in this room today because it's nice and light, and we've just had the clocks change, and it's all about lightness and all things nature and wonderful. So you can see a bit of tree in the background. I've also gone up in the world. I've got a mic now, so let's see if that makes any difference, makes things a bit clearer. Hopefully I've remembered to turn it on, because that was fun when I was practicing with it and did a whole 10 minutes of it not turned on. I'm just double checking. We're good. Okay, I'm at 98 subscribers. If you haven't subscribed and you'd like to, please press that button below. And now we'll get straight in to this month's session. So coming up, we've got best practice quote, an inspiring quote from a writer. We've got poetry inspired by food, because the other love of my life is food as well as poetry. And we've got a poet from Australia that we'll be looking at today. So, all right, mix, stick with me, have fun. Feel free to pause the video and come back to it if you want to take time out to do some of the activities, and just enjoy yourself, enjoy playing with words and being creative, because that's what it is all about. Okay, I do love a good poetry workshop, and I'm not talking about my own here. I like going to other people's workshops and being a participant. And I was at one maybe last year, maybe the year before, and the challenge was for us to take a poetry form that had already been invented and to change it and play with it. And someone in the group had this amazing idea to take the golden shovel poem. So a golden shovel poem, if you've not come across it before, is where you take a quote, usually a line of a poem, and you use each word in the quote as the final word in every line of the poem. So if you read down the last words of every line, it would read the quote. This will hopefully make more sense when it's on the screen. So that's a golden shovel poem. The form was created by National Book Award winning poet Terence Hayes in 2010. We have looked at these in the workshops before if you've been to them. If not, don't worry. And the golden shovel was a poem in his book Lighthead, which was written in honour of a poem by Gwendolyn Brooks. So that's why the form is now called the golden shovel, because the first poem written in this form was, the title of the poem was The Golden Shovel. The aim is you take a line or lines from a poem that you admire, you use each word in the line or lines as an end word in your own poem. You keep the end words in the correct order. This is important. You give credit to the poet whose work you've borrowed from, who originally wrote the line or lines. And the new poem that you write does not have to be at all related in topic to the poem that you got the words from. So that's a golden shovel. The person in this workshop that I was in took this and created a golden spoon. So instead of taking the line from another poem, they took a line from a recipe book. I usually use other people's poems in my workshops. This scares me, because in case you all hate it, but I thought I'd use one of my own, because I really loved this idea so much that I went away and had a go at a golden spoon. Let me introduce you to the book that it came from. So this is, I think it was called The Love of Cooking. We've just got Overcooking now. So this was my nan's, and we used to, I just opened it at the page where the quote's from, which was not planned at all, because we've got loads of notes all in here. There's like how to cook the Christmas cake. This was my favourite page. This was the pancake batter page. So we had all sorts of batters. So it's quite an old book, and I remember when I was a teenager, my nan says to me, when I'm not here anymore, Emily, what would you like me to leave to you? I think she was doing a will or something. And I said, your dressing gown and the Love of Cooking book, because they were two things that just reminded me of her. So when she did pass, she kept her promise, and this is now mine that I use in the kitchen. Still as messy as we both were when we were using it together. So I had to take my quote from there because I love that book. My quote was by Sonia Allison, 1972, The Love of Cooking. Batters should be beaten hard and long in order to incorporate as much air as possible. That was my quote. And this is my poem. It's called The Clouds That Cover the Sun. And every word that was in that quote is the end word of every line of the poem. Your crochet hooks clank with increasing ferocity. Rain batters the windows and you wonder aloud if we should unplug the phone lines too. I say the splitting sky could be spotlights. Your resistance to this idea is only beaten by your desire to join me in singing loud and hard to some half-remembered music hall melody, and even then I notice your eyes flash towards the long scribbles of light. After a few minutes, you breathe in, replacing the air lost during our nostalgic gusto, and order me to move away from the window. I know where you're going to. Every rumbling ensures your brain will incorporate past raindrops into present, forcing you to relive that moment as often as they fall. A small amount of surface water, not much, is all that's required to resend those wheels skidding, to burst the air in a balloon that reads just married, crash after crash, and for as long as the storm lasts, you will remain convinced that every tragedy is possible. Okay, so that was my poem. As you can tell, it was not at all about pancakes. I just had to, it surprised me where it went really. I think batters the rain had to be important because I got the rain battering in the first line. And then I did, because it was my nan's book, I did begin to think of my nan who had a complete fear of thunder and lightning. The end bit wasn't true at all about a car crash in the rain or anything like that. She just didn't like the noise, I think, and used to tell me to get away from the window. So it's based on little bits of truth, but as everything else, all good stories, there's a lot of made up stuff in there. So that was my poem. You can see, I think, where this activity is heading. Create your own golden spoon. So choose a line from a recipe. If you haven't got a recipe book, then there's the internet. So, you know, I'm sure you can pick from a magazine or a book that you've just got on your kitchen shelf. Choose a line from a recipe. Each word will be the final line of your poem and keep them in the correct order. Have fun. It's really... It's really challenging, but it's really fun, so stick with it and just be surprised by what you come up with. And I will see you in challenge 2. Okay, welcome back. I hope you had fun with your golden spoons. Feel free to send them to me. Put them in the bottom of this video if you want to. Tell me how you got on in the bottom of this video. That would be great to see some more comments. We've also got a Facebook group for people who watch these videos. It is called the very catchy Positive Images Festival Poetry Workshops, and you can press join and you can meet with other people virtually and not in reality on Facebook who listen to these workshops as well. Okay. There's no poem here, we're going straight in with a quick write activity. So, notebooks and pens at the ready, or laptop or phone if you're that way inclined. Write down, first thing that comes into your head, that's the important bit of this, the name of a plant or animal. I'd be saying pigeon because that's what I can hear on the roof right now. But pick what you like, don't go with pigeon. Okay. Plant or an animal, you should have done that by now. Next one is a verb. For those of you that aren't teaching or haven't been homeschooling your children, a verb is a doing word. So any action word, walking, running, skipping, baking, anything that you do, pick a word. Okay, something you can see from your window. So wherever you are now, if you've got a window in the room, have a look out of it and write down the first thing that you notice out of your window. If it looks onto the street, that's ideal because you might see some different things to somebody looking into their garden, for instance, if you've got a garden. Next one, and again, first thing that pops into your head, something that you can't see out of your window, something it is impossible for you to see out of your window, something that is not there. Don't think about it, just write it. Last one, an emotion or a feeling. First one that pops into your head. Okay, pause the video, give yourself 15 minutes, so either just have a quick look at the clock or set a timer on your phone. 15 minutes, you're going to draft a poem. It's very unlikely you'd finish one in that time. Draft a poem that incorporates your words. You don't have to use them exactly, but see if you can incorporate those ideas in some way. Use some of the words exactly and see if you can use them in a surprising way. So maybe turning them into a metaphor. So if you picked hedgehog for the animal, maybe it's not a literal hedgehog. Maybe it's something that resembles a hedgehog or something that has the look of it, spikes, for instance. Have a play around. Have fun, as I always say, enjoy what you're doing, enjoy being creative, and I will see you in 15 minutes. Okay, welcome back. I hope that was a worthwhile exercise for you. Let me know, were you surprised by what came up in that poem? Were you surprised by the words that your brain just suddenly thought of? It'd be great to hear if you enjoyed that. Just pop a comment in below or hop onto the Facebook page, or feel free to email me and let me know how you did. Because it's nice to hear back from people, because I talk to a camera and I know that people are watching, so it's lovely to hear from you. Okay, here is one of our inspiring quotes. This one is from Peter de Vries. I always worry whether I'm saying these names right, because I just read them and I have to say them how I assume they are pronounced. Peter de Vries, 1910 to 1993, was an American editor and novelist, widely known as a satirist. I knew I was going to do that. Satirist. He did satire. Peter de Vries did satire. He was also a linguist and a comic visionary. He joined the staff of the New Yorker magazine and he worked there from 1944 until 1987. He mostly wrote stories for them, and he also touched up the cartoon captions, which is quite a unique job, I think. He was a prolific writer, and in his lifetime he wrote short stories, reviews, poetries, essays, a play, novellas and 23 novels. So here's his quote, which I absolutely love, by the way. "I only write when I'm inspired, so I see to it that I'm inspired every morning at 9 o'clock. And it made me think about the idea of the importance of routine. You know, we make sure we get up every day and have a wash and brush our teeth and have breakfast, but are we making sure in our day there is space for us to be creative? Even if it's only for 5 or 10 minutes a day, are we making that time? Because we are creative beings. So personally, I think it's really important to do something creative, whether it's doodling, whether it's a poem, whether it's some sort of art, anything creative, anything where you're using your imagination. It's really important. So it also made me think, what inspires me and how could I make more of an effort to seek that out? So I love nature and the outside. I think that's really common. So every day now I am making sure that I'm really lucky. I live 10 minutes from a park. So I make sure that I walk to the park and I spend 20 minutes there at very least every day, and that's my exercise for the day. It's my time to think and reflect, and for those first drafts to take place in my head. If I've got a lot going on, usually the problem solving happens over at the park, not in front of my laptop. So that is something that's important to me. So have a think what inspires you. Maybe it's a cup of coffee first thing in the morning. Maybe it's looking at some old photographs. Maybe it's reading a book or reading some poetry from someone else. Whatever inspires you, make sure you make time for it, because you are important. That is important. Okay, lecture over. Activity 3. I've put a big bold note to myself here on my paper, because the title of the next poem is called Ballad of the Totems, and I was visualising a totem pole. I had no idea there was another meaning to this word, which is why the first reading the poem I was really confused about the title. But I've learnt something, and a totem is a natural object or animal that is believed by a particular society to have spiritual significance, and that is adopted by them as an emblem. So that's a totem. Maybe you were smarter than me and you knew that, but if not, then you've learned something as well. So this poem is called A Ballad of the Totems. It's by Udagru Nunukkal, who was also known as Kath Walker. So she had 2 names that she wrote under. It's a long one, that's why I'm finding the bio. I thought I'd do the bio first. Udagru Nunukkal, Kath Walker, 1920 to 1993, was an Indigenous writer and political activist. She was one of the most progressive and well-respected poets of her time. She was the first Aboriginal writer in history to release a book of verse. Her advocacy for Indigenous welfare reflected in her poetic form as she wrote from her perspective as an Aboriginal Australian woman. I really like her poems. Some of them are really thought-provoking. And in fact, I'd say they're all thought-provoking actually, but this one is also a humorous one, which I enjoyed immensely. It's a long one, so get yourself comfy. Ballad of the Totems. Nothing to do with the totem pole, it's to do with the natural object or animal with spiritual significance. My father was a Nunukkal man and kept old tribal way. His totem was the carpet snake, whom none must ever slay. But mother was of Peewee clan, and loudly she expressed the daring view that carpet snakes were nothing but a pest. Now, one lived inside with us in full immunity, for no one dared to interfere with father's stern decree. A mighty fellow 10 feet long, and as we lay in bed, we kids could watch him round a beam not far above our head. Only the dog was scared of him, we'd hear its whines and growls. But mother fiercely hated him because he took her fowls. You should have heard her diatribes that flowed in angry torrents, with words you'd never see in print except in D.H. Lawrence. I kill that robber, she would scream, fierce as a spotted cat. You see that bulge inside of him? My speckly hen made that. But father's loud and strict command made even mother quake. I think he'd sooner kill a man than kill a carpet snake. That reptile was a greedy guts, and as each bulge digested, he'd come down on the hunt at night as appetite suggested. We heard his stealthy slithering sound across the earthen floor, while the dog gave a startled yelp and bolted out the door. Then over in the chicken yard, hysterical fowls gave tongue, loud frantic squawks accompanied by the barking of the mung, until at last the racket passed, and then to solve the riddle. Next morning he was back up there with a new bulge in his middle. When father died we wailed and cried, our grief was deep and sore, and strange to say, from that sad day the snake was seen no more. The wise old men explained to us it was his tribal brother, and that is why it done a guy, but some looked hard at mother. She seemed to have a secret smile, her eyes were smug and wary. She looked about as innocent as the cat that ate the pet canary. We never knew, but anyhow, to end this tragic rhyme, I think we all had snake for tea one day about that time. So I hope that was something different for you. I hope you enjoyed that. If you've not heard a poem from an Aboriginal Australian woman before, then you have now, because I think it's important that we hear different voices in these workshops. And also, what a great poem. So your activity, can you write about an animal or an item that two people have different views or feelings about? So this could be serious or it could be humorous, like a Doogaroo Noonacool's poem, because obviously the mother and the father had very different views about the snake. To the father, it was something sacred that would be protected. There was no way it was going to get hurt. It was allowed to live freely in their house with them. In fact, it was important that it did. But the mother didn't quite share his enthusiasm for that, because she was from a different tribe and that wasn't her totem. So it could be an animal, it could be an item, but a poem where two people have different views on the same thing, the same object. Okay, our next poetry workshop is Sunday the 25th of April 2021. There's also, spoiler alert, going to be a special session in June. We'll probably bring it forward a week like we did last year, because we will be celebrating National Refugee Week and Coventry Welcomes Week, which is Coventry's sort of National Refugee Week, except it's local to Coventry. So we'll be looking at poems from all over the world again in that session. But that's a June one, so we've got next session's 25th of April, we've got a May session, and then we've been invited back by Coventry Welcome, so we'll be doing that session a week earlier in June. But you've got ages before you need to worry about that, and I will remind both of us before that happens. Thank you for sticking with me. Well done if you've done the activities or if you're intending to do the activities. Thanks to Positive Images Festival, who have kept these going over the years, and you know, even through the pandemic, have carried on funding these workshops. So it's hugely appreciated by me as an artist and by the people who have told me that they feel a little less isolated because of them. So thank you, take care, and I will see you next month.